Hello and most welcome to 824. And today we are going to do something that could be taken from James Joyce. It's the flow of thought, or the thinking movement. I mentioned before about the cerebellum, the little brain, lillhjärnan as it's called in Swedish, and that it is responsible for thinking movement and also proper movement in the body. And that is most interesting. This is the connection we've been looking for a very long time between what is thinking and what is movement. And that will actually put thinking into the frame once more. Because I think that thinking been out of the picture way too long. It should come in and play an active part in our lives once more. But as thinking becomes shut out because of the current model, where the inside is not something that really counts, it doesn't have any value, we devalue the inside and we sort of put a lot of value on the outside. All explanations can be made from the outside. And I would specifically recommend here Kalle Lundar to have a peek at what our teacher wrote latest. That is a material explanation for all divine. I think it's quite clever actually, but it also shows that there is from the beginning a devaluation of the inside. Doesn't seem to be very important. I'll see if I can't copy the text and put it into the description. And do remind me, I forgot what link I was to put in last time here. And I would say this movement towards thinking and the inner side, it's ghastly important. And it's because this is the way we become self-conscious. This is how we learn to reflect on our own very thinking. To see that we can have thoughts and that thoughts are something different from ourselves. And I think that is immensely important, taken because in the cerebellum, bodily movement and thinking movement is absolutely the same. So by improving the movement of thoughts, the thought stream, we will also improve our bodily movement, our bodily functioning. The thing that Frederick Matthias Alexander called use. In the West, we care a lot about our material body, to use the description that is current. We put the body into exercise. We go to the gym. We take long, rigid or wholesome walks. We try to eat our veggies, and we also add different supplements to our diet. And on a regular basis, we go to the health security and check our health, check our blood pressure and other things. But there is little to none care about the mental health. That seemed to be a whole area that's shut out from investigation, almost completely. And that has its consequences. One thing is it's been so very hard to understand Frederick Matthias Alexander from a modern viewpoint. And we don't do much to improve our health either. Because if we don't care about our thinking modes, we lose out on a very important area in our lives. We cannot improve the thinking, and I would say by improve our thinking we can gain an incredible lot of different things. So I suggest today in this lecture 824 for the first time, because this is also a big step for myself personally. I have actually, to be honest, shied away from the idea of looking into the thinking processes. I thought it to be artificial, a sort of a construct, and not being natural. And yes, I given in to the logocentric attitude of the living inner consciousness that should not be touched and only reflects the outside. It's this living phantasm, this ghost-like creature of consciousness that is informing the words in the present to disseminate them or inseminate them, as Derrida would say. So I learn as the process go on. Took actually a bit of struggle to convince myself to this, and it has actually been connected with guilt and other things. I'm very used to going away from the thinking area in my daily life. I seem to avoid it, and now I understand that it's a shame. It is a most interesting place to venture to. Your inner world, to discover that is a little bit like discovering a whole new continent. You will feel a little bit like Christopher Columbus when he discovered America, and you, terra incognita, to be mapped, categorized, differentiated, named. Hispaniola, for instance, the beautiful island. And that would be the very first step. It's to look, take a gander, just peek inside. And I would call this stage one, beginning the journey, setting sail with the Santa Maria and Pinto and the third boat, whose name I forgot, go westward and discover the inside, go inward. This very first stage is a discovery. Do not put too much expectation the first times. You are bound to see only a little, but it can be very compelling once you started. I took a gander myself early this morning, and I was amazed. There is a lot of things going on inside. We human beings have on an average 70,000 thoughts a day. That's quite a lot. And the little I saw when I went inside into this terra incognita, there was like returning thoughts, and some thoughts were dark and troublesome, and some were just boring, repetitive. Imagine what you can do. You can do irrigation. You can take away like you are taking care of a garden, like this garden we have around us here. It's in dire need of some care, obviously. Needs to be cut. New seeds needs to be planted. And probably some grass needs to be harvested or cut. And that is actually a rather interesting metaphor for what thinking is. You can see it like this, that by putting seed into the ground, they will eventually flourish. At least some of the seeds will flourish. And that's a way of thinking of thoughts that was suggested by the American philosopher William James. He's talking about thoughts as actions or potential actions. So you put your thoughts in the head, they turn up, and some of these thoughts will end up in action in the ideomotor brain, where ideas are put into the ground, some of them will develop and produce action. And by going inside, you can see what thoughts you have there. What sort of seed do you have? Maybe you need to do a rearranging. Maybe you need to plan differently. And I can promise you, it will always be better than pure chance that I have been trusting so far so good. If you actually look inside, you will be able to construct and having just the garden that you yourself really want to have. I'd say that's quite the difference. But the first thing in this stage is do like Cristobal Colon or Christopher Columbus. Name the thoughts. You need to start naming your thoughts. Put them in different categories, differentiate between them. Put them in boxes. The nauseating thoughts, you can call them unwanted, and I will show later techniques to get rid of intrusive and unwanted thoughts. And also the ones that are just repetitive and you have been so bored about them for a very, very long time. And you're realizing that by going into the thinking system. Once you try this for a couple of weeks, or depending how much time you need, maybe you're already skilled at this and don't need more than an hour, you should go over to stage 2. Once you're getting familiar with the terrain and you can put more and more names on the different things, you can start looking at your thinking life as a whole, because there is a movement in that. And that is the famous direction. But now we look at direction from the thinking plane, not only from the bodily plane, but from the thinking plane. Can you see how marvelous this is? That now we can combine the thinking plane with the action plane. And the cerebellum is, well, was the key for me anyway, to understand that very important point. And this is something the Honorable Dr. Stephen Fleming also calls the development of self-awareness, or metacognition. And I mentioned metacognition earlier, but just that is probably something that is something only we human beings are capable of. And it's very good to have, but not exactly how to develop it. That has always been out of the picture. Not so much any longer. Now we have found a pathway. You can see the strength in different thoughts. They are all different. Give them value on a scale 1 to 10. Some are pushing the cerebellum in the same uniform direction. And in the end, it can only be one singular direction. There cannot be several. So you need to gather the thoughts that actually help you in the direction. And in the end, you will also be able to construct your very own thoughts to help you with the process. And this is partaking in the action of making your very own motor action. And this is actually what conscious control is all about. Isn't that marvelous? Finally, we got a much clearer and relevant view on what is this conscious control and how can we further it and help us direct it. You can compare in this stage too, you can compare the unnecessary thoughts to things that hinders the development of energy, the prana, that doesn't give flexibility, doesn't give flow to the thinking movement. And those thoughts can be harsh, can also be completely negative. I discovered some of those as well. And they can put yourself down. Constant thinking of being too self-aware of yourself. Something we mentioned in connection with the American/Indian philosopher thought manager Cam Knight, that there can be negative self-talk. And this is actually something that we develop and produce early on in youth, where we learn to regulate our own thinking process, our emotional system, our responses to stimuli from the outside world, and also, even more importantly, the reaction that goes on inside. And that will happen even if you're not self-aware, just in balance together with your environment. But it's even better to make the whole thing self-aware. And of course, once more, I have to say my thanks to Rodolphe Gachet. Is a person that gets more and more interesting. He helped me to see that we get stuck in the mirror gestalt, so to speak, and we don't see a possibility for both being the thought and reflecting upon it. I'm in good company to make that mistake. It was also made by René Descartes. He fully identified himself with the contents of his conscious process, said that was him. But I would say that's the trap of the mirror. And once you're in there, you can produce all the other things that we've been discussing about intention, and there being only one meaning to each and other word, and all those things. So this is a most interesting pathway that's opening up here, I'd say. And this also helps to understand previous lectures we had about Ted Diamond, the excellent Alexander teacher, who is very good with the bodily side. He made excellent anatomy books for Alexander teachers and people who are interested in improving their movement skills. But he is also very much into ideomotor action, that action and ideas in some aspects, maybe all, are one and the same thing. And of course you understand now, this makes being self-aware about your thinking even more important. Listen to this, what the cerebellum controls balance, it controls posture, It controls motor learning. Motor learning is learning new skills like skiing or dancing ballet, or why not Tai Chi, Qigong, or yoga. It's also about sequence learning, and that sequence learning could also be the different moves you make in a dance, but at the very same time, the sequence of thoughts. You see here how both sides help to get a better view of directionality in thought slash movement. Cerebellum also controls, to a very great degree, what we call mental functioning, how well we function. And as I mentioned before, emotional processing is also going around here in the cerebellum. So we learn how to either construct emotions that we learn now that we actually do, but we have all constructed emotions that we need to take care of, something I mentioned 2 lectures ago in 821. That all these come together, and in this stage 2 I encourage you to see how thinking change over the day. What sort of thinking did you have early in the morning, just when you wake up? Did you feel clear-headed, optimistic? Did you feel maybe indecisive, not clear of what you're supposed to do during the day? All those things are very interesting, and don't judge too much. Just let the thoughts at this stage, stage 2, be thoughts. You're still mapping out the territory. You are this fantastic explorer. You are your own Christopher Columbus, going into the inside for the very first time. Well, that's how it is in my case anyway. So balance in thinking and balance in movement is, to the body, the very same thing. So when you're out of sync in your body, your thinking is out of sync, and you can go both ways, as suggested by many physiotherapists like Ted Diamond, but also Barbara Conable. And it's that once you self-regulate better, you start recognizing bad thoughts, you learn the techniques for getting rid of them or dissolving them. It's not as easy as it sounds, but there are techniques that are proven to be very effective and helping to balancing up the thinking system. And once the once the thinking system becomes more balanced, you will also become more apt in recognizing, seeing the territory. So at the very same time, when you start this process, you also sharpen your abilities to see the thoughts for what they are. Think about it this way, or I should think about it this way. I have long always done like René Descartes, completely identified myself with my own thinking. It's time now to step out of the mirror reflection and see it's not really the same thing. There is not a law of identity here. We are not governed or regulated by the law of the excluded middle. And once you learn to control your thinking, you will also feel, and I had a little hint of this already today, after my very first check out into the whole thing, it is you become more flexible in your thinking. It's not as harsh anymore. And think about this analogy. When you are smooth in your movement, when you are moving yourself in a soft, adjusted way, and you are prepared to take necessary actions without overwhelming your system, you are perceiving the surrounding world with acuity, but not too harsh. It's when this staring look disappears and softens. This is the softer eyes. The softer eyes are the ones that can take in what is in the periphery. Softening of gaze has a very significant effect on the cerebellum. It calms the whole system. And you can go both ways. You can calm your thinking process, but you can also calm your gaze. And by calming your gaze, you make for a softer attitude towards the world. And you are not as stuck in this rather clumsy, unconscious reaction. You are now training your cerebellum. And by now you are ready to go into the third stage. And I call that stage the process stage. Now you are skilled enough to go in and change thinking directly where it evolves and where it sort of turns up. And you can start to eliminating or dissolving, maybe is a better word, thinking that's been sort of taking up your energy. It hasn't gone in the uniform singular direction, and every thinking that doesn't go in the direction is actually taking away the direction. It's like this: many directions at the same time diminish the uniform unidirectional upward movement. This is a way to gather prana or kundalini if you want. This is something that helps with the body system, and it also calms it at the very same time. The third step is the step where you are sufficiently skilled to see what thinking is good, how thinking is changing within yourself during the day, and you know exactly, and that's a good start, when to do certain things mentally and bodily. You know when it's the best time to make important phone calls, do complicated calculations, write something complicated, or when it's the due time to relax and just watch the telly or listening to the wireless. All these things will improve as you learn your own daily cycle for thinking. You will be able to pinpoint, oh, that's a perfect opportunity. That's the moment to do just that and nothing else. And you see the connection to bodily movement, where we think, oh, it's better to run maybe in the afternoon when you are a little bit more flexible after moving the whole day. Or it's better to take a bath late at night to help yourself relax and soften your muscles. Exactly the same thing is going around with the thinking, but even more so. The thinking changes ridiculously a lot during the day. That I already noticed after just one singular day, that it's completely different now, about 3:45 than it was this morning. And my thinking is getting sluggish. It's more repetitive thoughts. It's not as fresh as it was in the morning. It was as fresh as morning dew this morning. Now it's more dense. It won't move in the same way. And my body doesn't move in the same way. So this is an excellent way to help your use to get into softer use and more adequate use and much more healthy for your body-mind system. And we already mentioned all this RSI and injuries and all that thing. You become more flexible and more at ease with your own body/mind system. And that is good in all aspects. And I won't go into the health sides of this, but they seem to be pretty massive, because inaccurate thinking or not so unidirectional thinking leads to health problems, while the opposite, more unidirectional thinking, leads to better immune defense, for instance, but much other things as well. Well, it's most interesting. I say thank you very much. This is an incredibly interesting subject, and I'm happy that I started myself as well. Well, I'm going to give you reports later on. I wish you a very pleasant afternoon, and goodbye.